Your ability to retire from your business someday on your own terms depends heavily on how well you build and preserve the value of your company. I'll be right back with Tom Bayer, CPA and Certified Exit Planner from Springfield, Illinois, so he can tell you how it's done. Hi, I'm Norman A. Hood, financial advisor and host of the Exit Plan Show. I interview America's top advisors to help business owners like you enjoy more freedom, grow companies faster, and retire on their own terms. Thanks, Tom. I got you back again. We're going to talk about how a company owner can build the value of his company and how he can preserve and protect it. So let's get started, and we're going to hit 5 areas. One is something known in the exit planning industry and business planning in general as a value driver. And then we're going to talk about what are we actually trying to preserve and protect. And we're going to talk about the management team again. And then we're going to talk about something different that hasn't come up before, and that's the customer base. And then, of course, we're going to talk about operating systems, what keeps all this running together. So let's start out with explain to people what a value driver is.
So value drivers, some of those topics we're going to talk about here in a minute a little deeper, but value driver in a business is the leadership of the business, the management team of the business, the customer base of the business. Are there unique processes? Is there intellectual property inside the business? The customer service of the business? What is it that makes customers keep coming back to the business? That's really what the value driver is, and frankly, that's what business buyers want to buy. They want to buy a business that's got systems in place and is going to continue to generate positive cash flow, continue to attract customers to the new customers to the business, and retain the existing customers because of their customer service. So a value driver is really a combination of all those things, and depending on what industry you're in, there could be some unique value drivers, whether you're in the construction business and maybe you've got key customer relationships with certain types of customers, or maybe you've got some really unique industry knowledge that makes you a business that can, get a premium for their services only because they're one of the few that can perform that service.
Okay. So let's say that those value drivers aren't so hot in your business. Maybe your cash flow's decent, but when you analyze the value drivers, there's maybe a lot of room for improvement. What do you do then?
Well, let's just take an example, Norm. Let's assume that a business has a customer base that is fairly concentrated, as an example. Let's say they have a customer that represents 30% of their business. That's a pretty big risk for a buyer to take on. So if you're going to sell your business to an outside buyer and they see that there's customer concentration there, they're probably going to discount the value of that business pretty heavily because they're afraid that losing that one customer could have a pretty adverse effect on the business. So how do you address that? Well, can you get that large customer to agree to a multi-year contract for your services or your products? Give them some outs, but give them limited outs. In other words, as long as you deliver a quality product or a quality service to that customer, it's going to be very difficult for them to leave the business. So those are the kinds of strategies you need to look at in order to help improve those value drivers. One of the first things we do when we look at a business and we start to try to understand how they're performing is we try to benchmark that business against our industry peers. We've got some tools to be able to do that, and we understand and work in a lot of industries, so we have expertise in those industries. So I might access one of my other partners or team members that have expertise in a specific industry to help uncover where there might be some ways to improve their value drivers, improve their cash flow. Another example of that might be maybe their gross margins are lagging behind their peer group. So that becomes a question of obviously why. Why is their gross margin not why aren't they hitting their numbers? Is it a productivity issue in their manufacturing facility? Are they buying their products or services that go into their finished good? Are they buying those at the same price as their competition? There's a lot of reasons, but in some cases you might actually have to find an industry expert to come in and provide some consulting to that business owner.
Okay, so maybe like a business consultant. Okay, makes sense. So we've talked about how we can improve our value drivers, but how do we protect them? When we talk about preserving and protecting business value, what areas are we focusing on?
Well, I think first of all, you're focusing on cash flow. The value of a business really, in most cases, comes down to the cash flow they're generating. In some cases, though, you might be just protecting market share. There's a lot of consolidation going on in a lot of different industries now. So one of the things buyers are buying is market share. So even though maybe the profitability isn't where it should be, the buyer may still pay a fairly nice premium for that business only because they're gaining more market share in their particular industry. So what you really want to preserve is the customer relationship, and you want to preserve the cash flow as best you can, which means trying to operate the business as efficiently as you can, providing a high level of service to your customer so that you can generate profitability and cash flow.
Okay. And we've mentioned management team a few times already, but when it comes to preserving a management team, even and protecting, against what can happen, what are some things there that might?
So let's use an example, Norm. Let's assume you're a business owner and you're 55 years old and you want to retire from the business in 5 years. I call that you're really close to the finish line. Mm-hmm. So it's really a critical time for that business owner. He's got a nice business generating good cash flow. He's got a good management team in place. The last thing he can afford to happen is for one of those key managers to walk out the door and go to another competitor, and then you potentially lose some customers. You clearly are going to have some institutional knowledge walk out the door. Maybe some unique processes to your business are going to walk out the door. So one of the most common issues we see in exit planning is they haven't really protected the business from the management team leaving. So to protect the business, you talk about things like non-compete agreements. You talk about deferred compensation agreements where you incentivize the manager to stay into the business, and you have vesting in some future benefit so that if they would leave within the next 5 years, let's say, they would lose a pretty significant future benefit. Or you start to look at how can I get some equity in that management team so that they actually have some ownership and start to enjoy the same benefits of ownership that you as the majority business owner are enjoying. So management team, or protecting that management team, is really, really a critical issue. And a lot of times one of the first things we start to work on with the business owner, because we really help them understand how exposed they are in some cases.
Okay. Yeah, because we talked about earlier how important it is when the owner starts to phase out to have a management team that can take over and run the business, because obviously if it's a one-man show, no one's interested in buying that. But at the same time, you're building up this management team. If you're not careful, you're building up a liability. And so you could put 5 years in building a management team, and then they decide to walk, and you really don't have anything to sell, and you've run out of time.
Yeah, and the other thing is, if something would happen to you as a business owner, and now your family has to deal with the value of the business, making sure you have a management team that's going to walk in the door the day after that unexpected event and have incentive to keep running the business so that your family is protected and the value of the business isn't impaired is also really another significant consideration.
Okay, that's a big thing. I wonder how many people thought about that. I mean, that's make a note of that, folks. You mentioned customer base before. I think we've already covered that, but you don't want to get all your eggs in one basket, and with the customers.
Yeah, you know, one of the we're seeing a lot of consolidation, a lot of industries, and maybe your industry is consolidating, but let's assume for a minute that it's your customers that are consolidating. So, you know, 10 years ago you had 10 customers that represented 50% of your business, and now because of consolidation that's down to three customers that represent 50% of your business. How do you mitigate that risk? And you know that you've got risks in a lot of ways. You've got credit risk with that customer base, where you know if that customer is not financially strong, you could potentially really have a situation where you have a receivable or you have a lot of inventory that you're carrying for that customer, all of a sudden becomes worth less or worthless. So you really need to protect yourself there. But going forward, for the sale of your business or for exiting your business, you clearly have to retain those customers in your business. So you might consider you know, a lot of companies are getting creative with how do we incentivize that customer to stay around longer? How do we offer them, you know, thresholds where if they buy so much product or service, maybe they earn some sort of rebate, some incentives to really create stickiness for that customer. You might give up a little margin there, but in the long run, it might be well worth it.
Okay. And then last of the 5 areas is operating systems. And you know, one of the things I've noticed over the years talking to customers is sometimes it seems like all the operating systems are in the owner's head.
Yeah, and that's a really good point, Norm. You know, one of the things I talk to business owners a lot about is, you know, making sure you're not the business. You know, if you don't have people that can operate the business without you in your absence, then you've really got a business that's probably worth a lot less than it could be. So one of the questions I'll ask a business owner is, when's the last time you took a 2-week vacation? Because once you take a 2-week vacation and you really get away from the business, you know, you're not calling in every day, making decisions and addressing issues in the business, then I think that's a pretty good indicator of whether the business is ready for your exit and whether the management team is ready to take over. But on the topic of operating systems, the other thing I like to ask for early in the process is, give me some of the management reports that you use to run the business, because that tells me a lot about whether the operating systems are providing information to the key managers to help them make better decisions. And you know, business, you know, I'm a CPA and we're focused on financial statements and tax returns, but really a business runs on management reports, you know, cash flow, and really looking at how the balance sheet is running efficiently, whether or not we're hitting our productivity numbers, you know, where are we inefficient. Those are management reports that should be being generated inside the business, and that really tells me whether or not you've got good operating systems.
Okay, good. Yeah, we talked about this earlier, I think, in like episode 3 or 4 about the importance of you-proofing your business. This is sometimes we're like in the hub of the wheel, and everything revolves around us, and all of a sudden the hub freezes up someday, and there's nothing left. So that's a good point. I'm glad you brought that up. Okay, so action steps. Say we have some owners out there, businesses. They're thinking about an exit plan maybe down the road, but in the meantime, what can they do to make sure they have a business to exit from when that time comes?
Well, I think the first thing I would do if I were a business owner is go to my advisors or go to my industry trade association and try to get information about my peer group and benchmark my financial performance against my peer group. Understand where I stand. Am I a leader? Am I a lagger in my peer group? Because then you can start to drill down into what's actually what kind of financial performance is the business actually generating, and you drill down into where am I underperforming or overperforming, and those are some real early indicators of where there's some opportunity.
Okay, good point. Good point. Okay, so if you like today's show, go to exitplanshow.tv and let us know. And while you're there, check the show notes for a link to Tom's website, his phone number, his email address, all the different ways you can get a hold of him. And then please don't forget to visit our website. Leave your comments below the show notes. Then hurry back for episode 10 when Tom's going to be back.